I started my first 2 years of undergrad as an exercise science major, and when I transferred schools, I ended up having to switch degrees to sport industry, and I graduated with a concentration in health promotion and a nutrition minor, which is basically just a whole bunch of words to say that I did all of kinesiology mashed up into one big pot of a degree. But a lot of those variety of experiences definitely led me to start narrowing down, and I could see by getting the nutrition minor, I knew I didn't want to be a dietitian. Working with health promotion stuff, I eventually realized maybe not working in corporate wellness, and I knew I didn't want to be in like a clinical lab setting for exercise science. So for me, and what I would really suggest for everyone else, is just gather as much information as you possibly can. I Googled everything known to man, I emailed a bunch of people, I called a bunch of people, went on visits to different schools, and even if when you're looking and selecting, if you're finding out things that you don't want in a program, that's still helpful information. So I definitely got frustrated sometimes, feeling like I wasn't finding the things that I wanted, but it helped me narrow down, and I knew the things that I didn't want, which is just as beneficial information. If you aren't sure about different programs, just keep asking more and keep talking to more people. That definitely helped me of getting a whole picture of all the schools I was looking at and getting to know really different perspectives about what the program was like and the people that were there and the school as a whole. I think I emailed like 15 to 20 people. I talked to 5 or 6 on the phone. I visited 3 different schools, and then ended up applying to 4 schools and 7 different programs. So I really kind of cast my net wide. Definitely make yourself known before you're submitting an application. I think every single school that I applied to already at least had heard my voice on the phone when I was submitting my app, so then when they were looking on paper, they already had kind of an idea of who I was, and I generally think people look better in person than on paper, hopefully. So definitely trying to make those connections early before you're submitting helps narrow down. They get a lot of paper applications, so just trying to show yourself as a person outside of what's written on your resume and written in your essays is definitely beneficial. Learning the school's language is really important. If you know that someone that you want to work with really is lab heavy and is very much kind of a hard science type of person, then when you're writing to them you need to be using hard science type of language, and just understanding that you're trying to tell them that you know what they do and that you want to be a part of it. Also, not only looking at, when you're sending in applications, writing about why you love the school, but also why you would be a benefit to the school, was one of the best advice that I had gotten. They know that people like their program, they want to know why you would help their program grow. So definitely make yourself known, connect to as many people as possible, so you're more than just a name on a page, and learn their language. For me, my studying was entirely built around the Kaplan test prep books. I didn't even really go through the lessons. I spent most of my time doing the practice tests. Luckily, I had 2 older brothers who had already taken the GRE, and so they kind of knew the ropes and knew that it's a lot more about your reasoning than it is about just strict knowledge. So I really wanted to make sure I understood how the questions were worded, the process that they wanted me to think through the questions, and doing the practice test was definitely the way to help through that. There was a lot of times that I was really frustrated because they're hard questions. Like, they're meant to make you feel dumb, I'm convinced, but it's how well can you use context clues and reason through. I only studied for about a week. I finished my finals and then took 1 week of only studying for the GRE. So I crammed, which I'm not gonna suggest that, but that did work for me, where I was just doing practice tests pretty much all day long for 5 days, and then I took it on that Friday. And just getting used to that testing scenario and the 45-minute and 35-minute chunks was really helpful for me. Sports psych was not my original plan, but I did know with a kinesiology degree that graduate school was probably an option. I've come from a family that did higher education and have had master's degrees, and so I kind of fell into that line of this is something that could be beneficial to me. I didn't know exactly for what. Even if you look at where I applied to all kinds of different schools, which was a good and a bad thing, I think. It gave me a lot of options, but also would have been helpful to be a little bit more narrow in where I was applying. I originally started thinking I wanted to do PT school, and then slowly realized, I don't think I like that much. And then I wanted to work in corporate wellness. Didn't like that much. Went to rec sports, thought rec sports is it's fun. Eventually was like, maybe not. And eventually landed on sports psych after looking at a bunch of different programs and just feeling like this was the better fit. They changed and switched, and that was definitely stressful at times, but it was helpful that I worked through all of that in undergrad. Because I had a variety of experiences, I could narrow down and see I like this part of this field, but not all of it, and just kind of switch and mold and alter it as I went. So plans changed. It was kind of scary, but we landed in the right spot. The first thing I think to kind of figure out with graduate school was the distance that I was willing to go from home. I initially started looking at a school way out west, and slowly started realizing that was a little too far out of my comfort zone for where I was willing to move, even though I liked the school and I liked the curriculum. That just didn't seem to fit well with me, being that far. So eventually I kind of narrowed it down to mostly Midwest and South schools, and at the very least less time change as I was traveling to schools. And then within that boundary, looking at schools that I liked their curriculum for was really important to me. I wanted it to be interesting, obviously. I knew it was going to be hard, so I needed to like what I was learning. And I didn't want to be learning the same things that I felt I already knew from my undergrad. So definitely challenging me in a way to learn something new. I especially wanted to find faculty that I knew I could connect with. That's super important. If these people are going to be teaching me even a little bit more hands-on and one-on-one than undergraduate is, and so I wanted to know that I was going to be taken care of and what I was learning and kind of looked out for. For me, finding a campus that felt like home was really important. I didn't want just the program to be awesome, but I wanted the whole school to really feel like it fit and jived with who I was, and that included all the other people that were in the program or just even students walking around. It had to feel right, which part of that was solved in doing visits and talking to more people for sure. And then also funding opportunities. Graduate school is not cheap, and there's a reality of you have to be willing to kind of give and take of how much it's going to cost you to get through those degrees. And so I at least wanted a place where I knew I had options to try and find some funding. For me, I think it's very different. In a good way. I think there's a lot of positives to that different change, but obviously going into graduate school you assume it's more work, and it is, but I think what I didn't recognize coming in was that every assignment was going to be an important assignment. There's hopefully a lot less busy work in graduate school, and that what you're turning in and doing is useful to you even just outside of a classroom assignment. So that's good and bad, and feeling like your time isn't wasted with what you're doing, but also everything is important, and so you have to be ready to do your best work all the time. Having a more narrow focus for sure is different in graduate school as opposed to undergrad. What you're learning overlaps in most of your classes, which is really cool because you get to go a lot in depth of what you're learning. But if you're somebody who likes variety and likes a lot of different things, that might be a little tougher with graduate school. Like I said before, just having a higher standard of work that you're turning in kind of comes with the territory of being in more of a higher degree, but you get used to it and you definitely get helped out. A big thing that I was excited for, and I didn't think I realized how important it was to graduate school, is the closer relationships with faculty that you're working with. It's rarely just like a professor that you have. In undergrad, it might be a 200-person lecture, and you know that person, but not really. It's definitely more of a one-on-one learning experience, which is really helpful. And having the smaller cohorts, generally, I think with grad programs, it's smaller cohorts, which is nice because you're learning the same stuff with the same people throughout the days, and you're going through exactly what you're going through, which is helpful. In undergrad, I really did not. I was super like, no, I want to be applied, and well, research is boring or hard or whatever. It sounded really tedious to me, and then I had a research methods course my senior year of undergrad with a really awesome professor who made me realize the fun in doing research. And she challenged me and she was like, I think you'd be good at it, I don't know. And I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. But just slowly kind of chipped away at that perception I had of what research was, and made it really fun and accessible to me. And so that started to shift how I was seeing research. And then that made me definitely see the importance of it, and that influenced when I was reading research articles in class and understanding all of those things, the importance and how it happened and what the process was of doing that. It made me appreciate it really, definitely a lot more. And even finding the curiosity in doing research, I think, was something I didn't understand until I had that course. And plus, creating new knowledge is way cool. So it's really fun to get to do that. And now I've totally shifted, and she laughs at me every time I see her because I went in like anti-research. So your perceptions can change. Kind of going off the last question, because I was super not interested in research in undergrad until pretty much I was on my way out. Definitely getting more research experience before I was here would have been helpful. I had minor exposure to it through a different professor that I had, but really getting to see how it works and understand what that process looked like, I definitely think would have benefited me before I got here. Not that every program requires you to do research, but you're probably going to be reading it and using it even if you're doing applied work. So I think just getting a hand in that experience for sure as early as you could, just to see what it's like, is definitely something I would have done earlier on if I would have knocked myself up the head and said, hey, research is cool. And I think getting connected to my faculty earlier on as an undergrad also is something that I would have done a little bit differently. I got pretty close to them as I was leaving, but understanding that they're going to be your biggest champions through that process of finding a graduate school, and they're the ones kind of shaping you and preparing you for what that workload is like. So definitely diving in a little bit sooner with getting to know them as well. PhD is my next step, and we're getting close to trying to figure out places to apply and going through this same process essentially again. Career goal would be to teach at a larger institution like Tennessee. Not super limited on where that is. I would just like to have a job eventually. It would be really cool. But I love being in the classroom and helping other people learn and grow, and teaching is really where my passion is. So the college campus setting is really perfect for that, and the college age is really fun as people are trying to figure out who they are and where they're gonna go. So that's definitely the setting that I like, and sticking around has kind of led me to pursue that next step. Long term, ideally, I'm continuing to pour into the sports psych field and grow it as I go. So for graduate school, full-time is 9 credit hours. So I'm in 3 courses right now, which is not a lot of time in the classroom per se. Only 3 days out of the 5 I'm actually sitting in a class. But with that then also means pretty much every single day I'm doing something to get some work done, whether it's full on sitting in the library for a couple hours to do some homework, or just chipping away as I'm watching TV. Most days you're gonna have to be doing something because the projects are large and you can't cram. If you're a crammer, definitely don't try and put things off. But outside of that too, you still get to be involved in the university. So a group of us in my cohort are on the intramural volleyball team right now. We play every Monday. We're called the Volley Llamas. We're going to the championship. Fun fact. So we still get to do fun things like that and getting involved, and we go on runs and walks on, I was gonna say the breezeway, that's not it, the causeway, and looking at just hikes, and we're going and doing fun things too to get our brains kind of away from the classroom setting. And even then your weekends, you still have weekends, you still get to do fun things that you're interested in doing. For me, sometimes it's going to group fitness classes at the T-Rex, which is super nice because they're free here. And we go to Zumba and all kinds of the goofy stuff just to stay healthy for one, but also just kind of de-stress a little bit. And even outside of that, I'm able to go home a couple times a semester to Ohio, which is a longer distance than a lot of my friends have to travel to, but it's still, you're able to go do other things. You're not locked in school mode 24/7. So even outside of that too, then since I'm a GTA, I'm teaching some of the PEAP courses. So I'm teaching one or two per session, per semester. And that is definitely a lot of front load preparing with the syllabi and your course schedule and all that. But that's even just kind of a fun break of getting to interact with you all as undergrads. And we're teaching tennis and golf and getting to be outside and do these things as well. So there definitely is a lot to balance, but it's doable. So I ended up selecting UT because, one, it was a well-established program. I knew that I was going to be learning from some of the best in the field, and they kind of already had it figured out, if that makes sense. I had done a lot of building my own major and things like that in undergrad, and I didn't want to have to do that as much for graduate school. So having a well-established program was definitely a sell. The opportunity to work with great faculty, like Dr. Blanton, definitely sold me to come here, and knowing that I was going to get to learn from just some really great minds was really cool. And after I'd come and visited, I knew that I fit in as a human being with them. I liked to get to talk to them and get to know them. And so that was even important, that outside of their intelligence was that I liked getting to work with them as people. I was really interested in the research that was going on here, and so I knew that I wasn't going to try and write a thesis about a topic that I wasn't actually interested in, so that was very important. When I visited, it did feel really friendly and homey, and I felt like I could walk around campus and I could see myself here, which is super important to me. That on paper it didn't just look good, but when I was here it just felt right.